Hi there, it's Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco, a podcast about the artists, activists, and small businesses that make our city so unique. Welcome to another Season 7 bonus episode. I recently learned that a photo book all about Bay Area hip-hop and street skating was coming out, and I got a chance to chat with the book's creator, Jacob Rosenberg. Jacob's book, Right Before My Eyes, visually chronicles both cultures on both sides of the Bay from 1988 to 1998, just before I moved here. It's an era I'm personally fascinated by. Here's my conversation with Jacob Rosenberg.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Palo Alto, grew up in the 70s. Down there, my parents migrated from the East Coast and the Midwest to sort of establish themselves in a liberal, open-minded backdrop and raised a family with values that they felt very strongly about. I attended elementary school in Palo Alto, middle school in Palo Alto, and high school at Gunn High School in Palo Alto. And then in that whole process, I really fell in love with skateboarding and photography. And I started to heavily document skateboarding in the late 80s and early 90s, making a migration up to San Francisco quite often to Justin Herman Plaza, which is known in skateboarding as EMB. And I was one of the first filmers at Justin Herman Plaza who was sort of the same age as the skaters who were there. And my success with my filming and photography became more important than my education. So I dropped out of high school and I moved to San Diego to make skateboard videos full time. And
Oh, wow.
I did that for about 2.5 years.
Okay.
And then I decided that I wanted to go to film school to get a formal education. And in the process of going to film school, my mentor, who really helped support me in my skateboarding passions and whom I made the videos with, passed away tragically. So I ended up going to film school in Boston at Emerson College. I ended up finishing the video that he was working on when he passed. And then when I got out of film school, I moved to Los Angeles to pursue a filmmaking career. And I've been in LA ever since.
One of the things I think about Boston is, especially for California kids, it's like winter. It's like the first thing
Yeah.
I think.
I,
So you've experienced winter, but now you've come back to
yeah.
California land.
I
Yeah.
mean, look, for me, like I knew I was going to be a Californian for my whole life. I mean, such strong roots here, such incredible environment. And of course, like you have a little bit of everything. And I experienced that in the Bay Area and I experienced that in Los Angeles. So college was like, what's an experience I can have for 4 years that will kind of color my character. And Boston is kind of the sister city to San Francisco in terms of the Bay, in terms of the neighborhoods, and ideologically with some scholarly institutions. And so
Mhm.
Boston was just like a great place to like know that I would be for a compact period of time. And there were 2 winters that I was there where the whole city was shut down entirely, like no cars. And it was one of the most beautiful sensory memories that I've had, where
Right.
you just don't hear anything. It's silent.
Yeah.
And people are just walking everywhere. It was really, really special experience out there.
And then we all experienced that again in 2020, but
Yes.
that's
Yes.
neither here nor there.
Yeah, I was riding my bike around Hollywood and listening to music. Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
I did cheat looking over some of the press material.
Hmm.
I believe we are the same age. Were you born in 73 or so?
Yeah. Yeah. I was born
Yeah,
in
me too.
73. We saw Star Wars in
Okay.
the theater,
Fuck
so
yeah, we
we're
did.
friends. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. That
I also
changed
have
us.
I also have older brothers, so like,
Yeah.
I got to cheat in that way too.
For
They
sure. They
told
got
me
the CDs
everything.
first. Like they got the Top Gun soundtrack before we did, all that
Yeah.
stuff. But
But it's
yeah,
all
I think
good. We're all cool with it. It
mhm.
doesn't matter.
Yeah, we're a fortunate generation to like literally like I feel like the cascade of things that happened to us, like we had call waiting, right? We
Yep.
had all these little things, what you could call people right back that called you. I mean, all these things changed in our era.
A lot of those Gen X things were coming up right ahead of this election because I think there was like a big Gen Xers for Kamala thing, like
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's all really fresh and front of mind. Also, though, what I want to say is I grew up in Texas.
Yeah.
So we are the same age. I grew up in Texas and probably started skateboarding around like 11, 12, kind of like
Okay.
going into sixth grade.
Yeah.
And like I dug my Texas scene, like Zorlak and
Yeah.
Jeff Phillips and all that cool stuff.
Yeah.
But
Incredible skateboarder.
I always had my eye on California and the Bay Area specifically. Like I
Yeah.
loved Bones Brigade, but I like zeroed in on Tommy Guerrero. And yeah, oh,
I mean that liberation that you felt from San Francisco, I think in skateboarding was unprecedented at the time, right? Like there are these flowing hills, which are the avenues, and they're very skatable. And then you know, sort of move your way into the bustling parts of the city, and the concrete nature of the city like really comes alive. And I think Tommy Guerrero is arguably like one of the most important historical figures in skateboarding. You know, he's a minority, incredibly stylish, and you know, had just like the right quality. The Bones Brigade is such an amazing, like, perfect team in terms of
yeah,
what they represented. But I just think Tommy's story and how he created an allure with San Francisco and how everyone in the Bay looked up to him. You
yeah,
know, he didn't have a skull on his skateboard. He had, you know, a flaming sword.
yeah,
Very different, you know, and that spoke, I think, to us a lot. I think what Tommy is too, that's really important. You know, there's like a generation of skateboarders who impacted people my age and your age. And then what they did is they kind of got in positions of power and they have fingerprints with companies. You know, so
right.
he was very involved with real skateboards and that next generation of skaters. And you know, whether it could have been his back issues that forced him into early retirement, but like he helped pave the way for a whole generation of pro skaters to take that shine. And then his
100%.
music is just so
Oh.
incredibly beautiful and soulful. And
I got
you
to
know,
see him. Levi's was doing a big thing, I think, for their 150th at the. Are you familiar with the Armory here in San Francisco over in the Mission? That big old,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Also, Star Wars ties to that
yeah,
building,
yes, yes,
but he played a set. It's like a free show,
amazing.
and it was so intimate. It was just like a corner of. It was so dope. It's
Yeah,
like childhood kind of dreams. That shit is happening for
yeah.
me.
I mean, the skateboarding has that really unique quality where it's like idol worship, but they're accessible
They're real
because
as
you share
fuck.
something in common with them. It's not
Yeah.
just a professional athlete who has $1 million contract. It's a guy who kind of seems just like you and me, you know, but not.
Yep.
I always just find myself, even I see professional skaters today, like if I go to an event and I see Christian Hosoi, who I'm acquaintances with, I'm still like, oh my God, that's Christian Hosoi,
Right.
you know?
Yep. Right on. I did not, I came to California as a young skater a couple times. I
Mm,
never got to skate in San Francisco. And I have my like Santa Cruz Jason Jesse. I put some trucks and some
mm,
wheels on. It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's a functioning skateboard, but I'm 51 and like
yeah.
I had bursitis in my hip a couple of years. But I bring that up because it's like especially when I saw the years, kind of the bookend years of your
Hmm.
project and your book, I moved here in 2000. So
Yeah,
that era that your book is about is like exactly when I
yeah,
was like in love and in awe of San Francisco and the Bay. So
yeah.
so first of all, thank you for doing this book. I can't wait to like hold it in my hands and
It
just
feels
geek
good.
out on it.
It's heavy, it's dense, it's like 150 GSM paper. And, you know, I really felt like the book had to have a certain quality to it because I think the story and the era has an emotional weight for me personally. So I wanted the book to feel that weight. But that era is like really, you know, for me, it was just like that's the era. Like in summer of '88, I go to skate camp. My life gets changed because I meet all these pros and I have a camera in my hand. And it really happens really fast. And then 1998, I'm in Hawaii making a music video for my favorite rap group, Hieroglyphics, who are from the East Bay. But if you go back and start to unpack the era, it's like '88 is arguably one of the greatest years in the history of hip hop. You know, 91, 92, 93 for skateboarding is absolutely incredible. Then 93 for hip hop is absolutely incredible. Um, and there's just something about that era where for people like you and me in our age group, there was this like looseness of expression. And I feel like we were pulling from the right source material to be inspired, but not pointing to it so clearly. I think in
Hmm.
hip hop, you look at samples and they're really pulling, particularly hieroglyphics, like really incredible jazz,
Hmm.
Roy Ayers and deep cuts and all this stuff that pull these samples together. But I think there was this like forward leaning aspect to our creativity in that era that felt like it was possible,
Hmm.
and it wasn't a posturing. It was like a drive that I think was innately like in the water at that time. I just find that with peers my age that we kind of all have this, we kind of did it our way, and the
Hmm.
what connected us to it.
And I actually want you to talk a little bit more about because I wasn't here, as I said,
Yeah,
but I don't think also that I've had that story on my podcast yet.
yeah,
And what I mean by that story is what your book is all about is like those two cultures that of skating
yeah,
and hip hop
yeah.
that came together very specifically in the Bay Area. Can you talk
They
about anything about that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, I think that like what skateboarding and hip hop have in common is they're like, you know, and not plugging the book, but I was very fortunate to get Chuck D to write the afterword, and he was my childhood hero, still a hero to this day. And he
Same.
equated the expression of rap music to the expression of skateboarding, that they're sort of
Mm,
disenfranchised people who are finding a way to communicate whatever it is that they need to speak. And in skateboarders, they speak through their actions on a board, and that's captured or photographed in rappers, on a microphone, and you can feel in the tone of the voice. So I think that skateboarding and rap music have always been companions in terms of
hmm
talking to each other with the existential rumblings of what's underneath that. I mean, I think in
hmm
my era, that sort of level of trauma, or the sort of, the gristle and the grit that was required to be a skateboarder was really real. You didn't stumble upon it if you had a very privileged life.
Right.
You kind of had some adversity that led you there. And I would argue that most of the hip hop in that era has some of those same fibers. And I think in the Bay Area, you have a really, big movement with Too Short in the East Bay, selling tapes out of the back of the car. You have RBL, you have all these sort of, Coog Nut, IMP, Ill Mannered Posse. Like, you kind of have all these guys who are like really expressive and really raw, and they're selling tapes out of the back of their cars, which means that the mediums that they're communicating through are sort of accessible to the people, right? Like the
Right on.
majority of expression is gate kept to a point of which technology like allows everyone to do it. And
Right.
so skateboarding becomes kind of accessible to a big population through like the means of production making it more accessible, and
Mm,
through ramps sort of ending in the 80s and street skating rising in the early 90s. So in the 80s, if you were into skateboarding, you probably needed to have a ramp near you to feel like you were having a conversation. In the 90s, it was like it was all in the streets. So what happens, in rap music, you have all these people who have these samplers, this recording equipment that's a lot more accessible. They're making, dubs on tapes, and then very easily shortly after making dubs on CDs. And
hmm
skateboarders are in the streets. And I'm in the position I'm in with my story because a video camera, I could have it in my hand and I could film a kid in front of me. So I think, you look at how the technologies kind of supported this expression kind of at the same time. And
hmm
then I think just expression in general in the Bay Area, I think has always been very elevated.
Yep.
I think people don't really give a fuck about saying something wrong. Like they say what they feel like
Right.
they need to say,
Right.
and that expression is out there. So to bring it, sort of to a marriage, for me, you had these young kids in Oakland and Berkeley, that were the Hieroglyphics crew, which is Dell the Funky Homo Sapien, Casual, Pep Love, Souls of Mischief, their producer Domino. And in my purview, they are the technical street skaters of hip hop. They're rapping about
Mm,
stuff that teenagers are connecting with, their rhyme style, their diction, their articulation, their
yeah.
pronunciation, like the stories that they're telling. I mean, Dell's talking about tripping on acid, and like the rave scene is starting, and there was like they're talking to me, and they're talking in a way that doesn't sound like the elders. It sounds fresh and
Mm,
raw, and they're sampling jazz. They were the equivalent of the skateboarding that was at Justin Herman Plaza. with Mike
Okay.
Carroll and Henry Sanchez and Rick Ibiseta and James Kelch. And the technical street skating that was this reaction to me in San Francisco in Justin Herman Plaza is the same technical rap conversation that was happening in Oakland and Berkeley by the Hieroglyphics crew. And the videos that I was a part of at that time pulled the skating and specifically Hieroglyphics music and put that into the videos, and those went out to the culture. And I had my connection to helping procure that music, which sort of made me a made man with the Hyro guys.
How did you get in with them? Like what's that story?
They there was a skater named Javante Turner who's like arguably one of the greatest early street skate stylists. And he was friends with Dell. They went to raves together, and Dell gave him a demo tape. And the demo tape at that time was music that hadn't been released yet.
Yeah.
And Mike Carroll, who was my muse and who I filmed all the time, got a copy of the demo tape. I ended up dropping Mike at home and making sure the demo tape stayed in my tape deck so that he could. And then I'm driving home and he's like, don't dub it. Whatever you do, you can't dub it. Well, of course I dubbed it.
Yeah.
And we ended up using one of the unreleased tracks that was on that demo in the video that I was working on called The Questionable Video. And
Got it.
Javante made sure Dell was cool with that. And that video came out and really caught the culture in skateboarding and really sort of made people feel like, oh, this Hieroglyphics crew is special. This Dell artist is special. So when it came time to make the second video that I was making in San Diego with my mentor, I was like, I don't want to go through Mike and Javante. So I contacted their manager, Domino, and the label, Jive, and I requested unreleased music that came straight to me. And then I, chose 3 or 4 songs that went into the video. Um, that
I
that
love
was like
it.
this unreleased stuff.
That kind of reminds me of that whole saying, sometimes you just gotta ask.
I mean,
Right?
my dad's thing is the worst question is the one you don't ask. And
Go.
there's a balance of that because you have to be genuine and authentic, right? You're not
Hmm.
nagging.
Hmm.
But the truth is like, hey, do you mind? Hey, is this cool? I don't know where we're going to get to because of that question when you ask, but I know that if I don't ask, I know where we're going to get to, which is not even a step forward.
I think
So
intentions, the intentions behind the questions are
yeah,
also important. But
yeah, yeah,
so what do you have? I guess tell listeners
yeah,
who haven't read the press release
yeah, sure.
and aren't friends with Nate,
Yeah.
tell them what this book is.
I mean, the book is really a photo documentary book. It's meant to be a coffee table art book, and it's really it leans heavily into my personality and my interests and my documentation of that era. So I was a photographer for different magazines. I was relentlessly documenting my friends, and so the book is a journey through the photographs I took, the video frame grabs, and then the ephemera and the artifacts of that era that I really tried to photograph as like museum caliber objects, old demo tapes, old camera equipment, old videotapes that I recorded with. So, that book goes from this 88 very antiquated moment to this music video shoot in Hawaii where there's, 16 millimeter frame grabs and film rolls and all these different, aesthetic and visual elements that articulate that journey of making that shoot. So it's a real first person account of an era and how to express yourself through your own growth into becoming an artist. So I feel so many familiar touchstones when I turn the pages, and younger people who
Yeah.
have connected with the book have articulated a sense of FOMO and regret for not keeping
Oh.
things that are important to them. But it kind of finds a way. So the book really, for me, is just a beautiful visual journey of an era that I think really speaks a lot to the passion of today and how we got here in many ways with a proto social media era of like I would send people videotapes, to try to lure them into filming with me more often.
Amazing. I love that. And I don't think we've said the name of the book. I love the name right before my eyes. Um,
Yeah.
I'm guessing that the book shows an evolution,
Yeah,
right?
yes, there's what we tried to do. My editor is a very incredible skateboarder and artist named Greg Hunt, and my book
Oh.
designer is a really amazing artist named Alexander Hansford, who's actually a magician, a magic
Oh.
magician, also a book designer. And we really tried to structure the book without any words. So all the interviews
Hmm.
and stuff and journalism that I wrote about hieroglyphics is at the very end. But the book itself is a visual journey, and I tried to find artifacts that gave clues to my development. So I have journal entries and a college entrance essay that kind of talked of different things. But there's a real story in there that you can connect the dots to. And then you can just see a kid who like desperately wanted to be a part of this group. I mean, at the end of the day, like it's a book about eagerness of youth and like wanting to
Yeah.
be accepted and included and wanting to do something. And as I look through the book, and there are certain images that call out to me where I'm in those images because I took self-portraits, or there's like a candid photo from a shoot. I can see myself stepping into the role of being a filmmaker
Hmm.
with them, and
And
there's
your own evolution then, right?
a million percent. I mean, the book is
Yeah.
very cathartic for me, and I also hope that it's inspiring for people to kind of see a story of how a voice takes shape.
Right on. Well, let's end with a plug. You can plug any socials or anywhere people can find your work, but also how they can get the book and when it'll be available, please.
Yeah. Well, I am just at Jacob Rosenberg on Instagram. That's Rosenberg. And the place to get the book is jacobrosenberg.tv/shop. So it's self-published, self-financed. I do have
Oh,
143 collector's editions, which come with some autographed photos and original film strips. And then I made 1,000 of the standard edition. And you can dig in, dive in, share it, and explore it.
well, I gotta say also that I love that because that doing it yourself is in
I don't,
keeping with the
I
spirit of what you're
I mean,
covering. It's
it's funny.
awesome.
Like you have that thing. I hate the sort of like aloof, the self-deprecating aloofness of people who are like, oh, I don't think I'm that talented, and they're like clearly talented. But
Right.
I think I was like, I couldn't envision pitching this book to somebody because I didn't know what exactly it was. So doing it myself allowed me to discover it along the way, and having two
Mm.
like really artist and incredible designer like as collaborators ensured that I got there the right way. And as a filmmaker, you constantly rely on collaborators, and so for me, that helped me land the ship in the best way.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for your time and good luck to you and everything. Like I hope we get to meet someday.
Yeah.
I don't hope we get to skate. Because like I said, it's
That's not going
just
to happen. I mean,
I'm over the yeah.
I'll skate every once in a while, but I just get injured too often. But I hope to come up to the Bay and do some signings up there. I have a lot of friends and family, so that would be special.
Right on. Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
That was Jacob Rosenberg. I'm taking next week off for Thanksgiving, but I'll be back on December 3rd with a brand new full episode all about Allegra Madsen, Frameline Film Festival's executive director. Episode 4 drops December 3rd, wherever you get podcasts. Music for Storied San Francisco was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Our contributing producer is Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 7th season, we have more than 220 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If possible, please, please, please rate and review the show. I want to know what you think. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at storiedsf, and reach out to us there or email us at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Be extra careful crossing the street. And keep being wacky, creative, and kind out there. See you next time on Storied San Francisco. We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.